Good evening, dear listener. As the world around you begins to quiet down, let's take this moment to gently leave the day behind. You've found your place of comfort, your pillow soft, your blankets warm. The weight of the day can wait until tomorrow. This time is yours. Let's take a deep breath together. Inhale slowly, letting the air fill your lungs like a fresh morning breeze, and exhale, letting the tension slip away like leaves floating downstream. Tonight, we're setting sail on a journey unlike any other. Imagine, if you will, a vast river stretching into the horizon, its surface shimmering under the light of a silver moon. This is the Pearl River, a waterway both ancient and alive, winding through lands filled with secrets, whispers, and wonders waiting to be discovered. The Pearl River is no ordinary river. Its waters carry more than fish or reeds. They carry stories, tales of forgotten gods, of creatures that swim just beneath its surface, of guardians who protect its hidden treasures. And tonight, we'll be joining a young scribe named Nia on her quest to uncover the mysteries of this magical river. But before we begin, let's take a moment to picture this world. Close your eyes and imagine standing on the riverbank. The air is cool and gentle against your skin, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine. The river flows steadily before you, its current a soft, rhythmic lullaby. Fireflies dance above its surface, their tiny lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth. The trees along the shore stretch their ancient arms toward the water, their leaves swaying in time with the breeze. Now, imagine stepping into a small wooden boat, its surface smooth and welcoming beneath your fingers. It rocks gently as you take your place, settling into the center. Around you, the world seems to hold its breath. The only sound is the quiet lapping of water against the boat's hull and the soft croak of frogs hidden among the reeds. In this place, time feels different, slower, softer. The worries of the day fade into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of the river. Each ripple carries you farther from the shore of your thoughts and closer to the heart of the story. As we begin this tale, let yourself drift alongside Nia. She is a dreamer, much like you, seeking answers to questions that have long lingered in her heart. The Pearl River has called to her, just as it calls to all who yearn for discovery. But the river is as much a test as it is a guide, and not all who embark on its waters return unchanged. Joining her are two companions, Kael, a rugged boatman who has weathered countless journeys on the river, and Leor, a mysterious ferryman with scales that glimmer like gold and eyes that see far beyond what's in front of them. Together, they will face the challenges the river holds, challenges that will test their courage, their wisdom, and their trust in one another. But don't worry, there's no rush. The river flows at its own pace, unhurried and timeless. So as we step into the current of this tale, allow its gentle flow to guide your thoughts. Picture the moonlight shimmering on the water, the way it dances like silver ribbons across the surface. Feel the cool night air, hear the soft rustle of the trees, and let yourself be carried away on the Pearl River's embrace. The journey is about to begin. There will be mysteries to unravel, sights to marvel at, and moments of calm where we'll simply float, letting the beauty of the river remind us to breathe. Are you ready? Then let's set sail together on the Pearl River Voyage. Chapter 1. The Mapmaker's Folly. The Pearl River shimmered like liquid starlight, its surface swirling with hues of silver and soft lavender under the crescent moon. Stories about its magic abounded in every village along its banks. The elders whispered of glowing sylphs who guarded its secrets and ancient curses that befell those who sought its treasure. These tales had been Naya's bedtime stories as a child. But now, standing on its misty shore with her journal in hand, she intended to make them her legacy. Nia was a storyteller, not just a spinner of tales, but a seeker of them. Her fingers, stained with ink and calluses from years of gripping quills, traced the edges of the map she'd purchased in a distant market. It was old and worn, the parchment thin and fragile, but its markings hinted at something wondrous: the location of the fabled pearl artifact. As she approached the dock, a figure stepped into the moonlight. Kael, her hired guide, was as imposing as the stories described him. His beard was streaked with gray, his sea-weathered skin lined with years of hard living. His eyes, sharp and assessing, lingered on her worn satchel. "You're late," he grunted, voice gravelly. "The stars will guide us," Nia replied with a calm smile, masking her nervousness. Kael snorted, clearly unimpressed. "Stars can't steer a boat through the whirlpools. Get aboard before I change my mind." The boat was a sturdy skiff with faded blue paint and patches along its hull where it had clearly survived its share of misadventures. Nia stepped aboard, clutching her journal as Kael pushed off from the dock, and the world behind them melted into the mist. Chapter 2. Into the Mists. The first few hours were uneventful, the river calm and placid as they drifted into its heart. The air carried a faint hum, a vibration that seemed to come from the water itself. Nia busied herself with her journal, sketching the riverbanks, gnarled trees whose roots twisted into the water, their branches adorned with glowing fungi that pulsed faintly in the dark. "Don't get too comfortable," Kael said, breaking the silence. "The river likes to lull you into thinking it's harmless before it strikes." "Strikes how?" Nia asked, looking up from her sketches. "Depends. Could be a sudden storm, a whirlpool, or worse. Everyone's heard the stories about the guardians, but it's the river itself you need to fear." Before Nia could respond, the mist thickened, and a faint melody drifted through the air, a haunting, almost otherworldly sound. Nia turned to Kael, but his face had gone pale. "Cover your ears," he hissed. "What is it?" "Just do it." The melody grew louder, wrapping around Nia like an unseen net. It was beautiful, unbearably so, and she felt herself drawn to its source. Before she could lean over the edge, a splash jolted her back to reality. From the water emerged a figure, sleek and serpentine, with scales that shimmered like opals. Their golden eyes glowed with an intensity that froze Nia in place. "Enough," the creature said, their voice a low, commanding growl. The melody ceased, and the air grew still. "You're a fool to come this far," the creature continued, climbing onto the boat with effortless grace. Kael's hands tightened on the oars. "Leor," he muttered under his breath. Leor, the river's half-mythical guardian, was known in every tale Nia had ever heard. Part human, part aquatic, and wholly unpredictable, they were said to be bound to the Pearl River by an ancient curse. "You seek the artifact," Leor said, their gaze fixed on Nia. "I seek its story," Nia replied, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. Leor studied her for a long moment before smirking. "The river tests those who trespass. You'll need more than a sailor to survive." "Let me guess," Kael muttered. "You'll guide us for a price." "Not a price," Leor corrected. "A promise. When you reach the artifact, you leave it undisturbed. It belongs to the river." Nia hesitated, but the conviction in Leor's eyes left no room for doubt. "Agreed," she said. Chapter 3. Sylphs in the Shadows. With Leor as their guide, the journey grew stranger. The river seemed alive, its currents shifting unpredictably as if testing their resolve. On the third night, as they navigated a narrow stretch flanked by towering cliffs, the air grew cold and the water glowed faintly beneath the boat. "They're watching," Leor murmured, their voice low. "Who's watching?" Nia asked. "Sylphs," Leor replied, gesturing toward the cliffs. Nia followed their gaze and gasped. Tiny figures darted along the rocky walls, their translucent wings catching the moonlight. They looked like living shards of glass, their movements too quick to follow. "They're harmless," Leor said, though their tone carried a note of caution. "Unless you anger them." "What angers them?" Kael asked, his grip tightening on the oars. "Disrespect," Leor replied. Nia reached for her journal, sketching the sylphs with delicate strokes. "They're beautiful," she whispered. One of the sylphs flitted closer, hovering just above the boat. Its eyes, glowing with soft blue light, seemed to study Nia. After a moment, it dipped its head in what looked like a bow before darting away. "You're lucky," Leor said. "They like you, for now." Chapter 4. The Siren's Song. The fourth night descended as a thick, impenetrable fog wrapped around the boat. The stars vanished, and the water turned eerily still, its usual hum now a disconcerting silence. Even Leor, who lounged casually most of the time, was tense, their sharp eyes scanning the mist. "What's wrong?" Nia asked. "This is Siren's Hollow," Leor said, their voice unusually grim. "If you hear singing, do not listen." Before Nia could press further, a soft melody began to drift through the air, lilting and sweet. It tugged at her senses like the first notes of a favorite song long forgotten. "Cover your ears!" Kael barked, his voice cutting through the haze. The warning came too late. Nia's hand faltered halfway to her head, her attention drawn instead to a figure emerging from the mist. The figure was ethereal, draped in flowing silks that shimmered like water under moonlight. Their face was obscured by a veil, but the melody they sang was intoxicating. "Nia!" Kael shouted, grabbing her arm. "Snap out of it!" She barely heard him. Her feet moved of their own accord, drawn to the figure, now standing on the riverbank. its hand outstretched. Leor leapt into the water, their movements swift and precise. With a sharp, guttural growl, they broke the song's spell. "Enough, Sorela!" The siren's melody faltered, replaced by a hissing sound. "You would interfere, Leor," the figure said, their voice still laced with an unnatural sweetness. "They're under my protection," Leor replied, their golden eyes narrowing. For a moment, the siren hesitated, its veiled head tilting toward Naya. "Very well, but beware, little scribe. There is always a price for venturing this far." The figure melted back into the mist, and the haunting melody faded. Leor climbed back aboard, water streaming from their scales. "Foolish girl," they muttered, though their tone lacked real malice. "What was that?" Naya asked, her voice trembling. "A siren," Kael answered gruffly. "The kind that doesn't need to drown you to claim you." Leor leaned close, their expression unusually serious. "Remember this. The river offers wonders, but it demands respect. Forget that, and you'll lose more than your way." Chapter 5. The Whirlpool of Memory. By the 5th day, the river's character had changed entirely. The banks were narrower, crowded with ancient trees whose twisted branches formed a canopy overhead. The water, once clear and shimmering, was now dark and still, reflecting the trees in warped, distorted shapes. "We're close to the whirl," Leor said, their voice carrying an uncharacteristic note of caution. "The whirl?" Nia asked. "A whirlpool," Kael explained. "But not just any whirlpool. It doesn't drag you under. It drags out what's inside you." "What does that mean?" "You'll see," Leor said cryptically, their gaze fixed ahead. As they rounded a bend, the current suddenly grew stronger, pulling the boat toward a swirling vortex in the center of the river. The water churned violently, glowing faintly as if lit from within. "Hold on!" Kael shouted, fighting the oars. The boat spun wildly as it was caught in the whirlpool's grip. Nia clung to the side, her heart pounding as visions began to fill her mind. Her grandmother's stories, her first failed attempts at writing, the faces of those who doubted her. "Nia!" Leor's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus!" "How?" she cried, her vision swimming with memories that weren't entirely her own. "Write it down!" Leor shouted. Her journal lay open on the deck, its pages blank and beckoning. With trembling hands, Nia grabbed her quill and began to write. Words spilled onto the page, chaotic at first, but gradually forming a coherent narrative. As she wrote, the whirlpool's pull weakened, the boat slowing until it drifted in still waters once more. Nia looked up, breathless. Kael was slumped over the oars, drenched in sweat, while Leor stood at the prow, their expression unreadable. "You passed," Leor said, their voice softer now. "Not everyone does." Chapter 6. The Sylph's Dance. That evening, the air seemed lighter, the tension of the whirlpool behind them. The river widened again, flanked by cliffs that glowed faintly in the dusk. Nia noticed tiny lights flickering along the rocky walls, like fireflies, but steadier. "Sylphs," Leor said, their tone reverent. The lights grew brighter, and tiny, winged figures emerged from the cliffs. They darted around the boat, their laughter like the tinkling of bells. Each sylph was no taller than Nia's hand, their bodies made of translucent, shimmering light. "They're beautiful," Nia whispered, reaching out a tentative hand. One of the sylphs hovered close, its tiny face studying hers. Then, to her amazement, it landed on her outstretched finger, its wings folding neatly behind it. Kael muttered something about bad omens, but Nia ignored him, captivated by the sylph's delicate features. "They like her," Leor observed, their voice tinged with something between amusement and approval. The sylph tilted its head, then darted away, joining its companions in a dazzling display of light and movement. They swirled around the boat, their glow illuminating the water, revealing schools of fish that shimmered like polished gems. For the first time since their journey began, the river felt not like an adversary, but a partner in their quest. Chapter 7. The Guardian's Lament. The sylphs vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the river steeped in an uneasy stillness. The mist grew heavier, thick and damp against their skin, muffling even the creak of the boat's hull. Nia had the distinct feeling they were being watched, though the riverbanks were obscured by the haze. Kael broke the silence. "This is the last stretch before the Guardians. If you've got any second thoughts, now's the time." "I've come too far for second thoughts," Nia replied, clutching her journal tightly. Leor, standing at the bow, tilted their head as though listening to something. "They're close," they murmured. The boat slowed, the current seeming to lose its flow entirely. The mist ahead parted like a curtain, revealing a towering gateway of carved stone, its surface etched with flowing runes that glimmered faintly in the dim light. Beyond the gate, the river seemed to vanish into a void of pure, inky blackness. "They're here," Leor said, their voice reverent. Out of the darkness emerged figures unlike anything Nia had ever seen. Tall and ethereal, the Guardians appeared to be made of liquid light, their forms shifting and shimmering as though they were reflections on rippling water. Their faces were featureless, save for faint, glowing outlines where eyes might have been. The boat stopped of its own accord, held in place by an unseen force. The Guardians spoke as one, their voices resonating like a choir of wind chimes and crashing waves. "Why do you come?" Nia stood, her knees trembling, but her resolve firm. "I seek the truth of the Pearl River," she said. "Its stories, its magic, its heart. I don't seek to take anything from it, only to understand." The Guardians regarded her silently, their luminous forms flickering. Then, one stepped forward, its voice a low, resonant hum. "Truth is a weight. Once carried, it cannot be set down. Do you accept this burden?" "I do," Nia said, without hesitation. Kael glanced at her, his expression a mix of awe and trepidation. Leor watched her with an inscrutable look, their golden eyes gleaming. The Guardians stepped aside, and the blackness beyond the gateway began to shift, revealing a glowing path of water that led to a temple shimmering like a pearl at the heart of the river. Chapter 8. The Temple of the River. The temple was a marvel. Its walls, carved from iridescent stone, seemed to pulse with a light of their own. Columns spiraled upward, their surfaces etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly, like embers caught in a breeze. At its center stood the artifact, a crystalline sphere suspended in mid-air, glowing with an inner light that shifted between colors like a living rainbow. Nia approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the vast, silent chamber. As she drew nearer, the air grew warm, and a low hum filled her ears. The artifact seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. "What now?" Kael asked, his voice unusually subdued. "It's beautiful," Nia whispered, reaching out a hand. As her fingers brushed the sphere, the hum intensified, and the runes on the walls flared to life. The chamber filled with light, and Nia was suddenly surrounded by visions, scenes from the river's past, its history stretching back through countless generations. She saw the river's creation, a divine tear falling from the heavens to carve its path through the land. She saw civilizations rise and fall along its banks, each leaving their mark on its waters. She saw sacrifices made by those who sought to protect its magic from those who would exploit it. When the visions faded, Nia found herself kneeling before the artifact, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at Kael and Leor, who had watched in silence. "It's not a treasure," she said, her voice trembling. "It's a memory, a living record of everything the river has witnessed." Leor stepped forward, their gaze soft. "And now, you've become part of that memory." Chapter 9. The River's Choice. As they turned to leave the temple, the guardians reappeared, their forms glowing brighter than before. "You have seen the river's truth," they said. "What will you do with it?" Nia held up her journal. "I will share its story, not to exploit it, but to honor it, to remind people of what it means." The guardians seemed to consider her words, their forms flickering. Then they nodded as one, stepping aside to allow the group to pass. "Be warned," one said, its voice echoing in Nia's mind. "Not all who hear the truth will honor it as you do. Protect it well." Chapter 10. The Journey Home. The return journey was markedly different. The river, once so hostile and enigmatic, now felt calm, almost welcoming. The mist that had obscured their path thinned, revealing a clear sky and a gentle current. Nia spent the days writing feverishly in her journal, filling its pages with every detail of their journey. Kael, though still gruff, seemed more at ease. His usual cynicism softened. And Leor? One morning, Nia awoke to find them gone, a faint ripple in the water, the only sign they had ever been there. "Do you think they'll return?" she asked Kael as they neared the village. Kael shrugged. "Leor goes where the river calls. Maybe it'll call them back someday." When they docked at the village, Nia felt an overwhelming sense of both relief and longing. She had found what she sought, but the journey had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. As she shared her tale with the villagers that night, their faces lit with wonder. She realized the guardian's warning had been true. The river's truth was a burden, but it was one she was willing to carry, for the sake of its story and for the magic it represented. The river had spoken, its secrets revealed. As Nia returned to her world, She carried not just the truth of the Pearl River, but also its memory, a quiet hum in her heart that would never fade. She would share its story with those willing to listen, honoring the Guardian's warning to protect its sacred essence. And though her journey had ended, the river's magic remained, flowing timelessly through her soul, a reminder that some truths are both a gift and a responsibility. And as you drift to sleep tonight, let the river's calm guide you. Imagine its waters carrying you gently toward a land of dreams, where the mysteries of the world are as soft and endless as the night sky above. Rest well, dreamer, and know that the Pearl River is always waiting, its current ready to carry you whenever you return.